Well, that is a massive curveball that has just been thrown in Andy Farrell's direction just a few days before he officially names his squad to tour Australia for the British and Irish Lions. And a talismanic player, one of the national captains, an almost guaranteed test starter, and a potential British and Irish Lions captain, Caelan Doris, may not be available. What do you make of this potentially seismic bit of news that is well worth digging into? And I've read as far and wide as I can, and I've gone to all the sources that I trust the most to try and get to the bottom of exactly how serious this is. And let me present my findings, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, because this does throw up a bunch of ramifications about who would be, if Caelan Doris weren't available, who would you imagine would be the test starting number 8 for the Lions? As a lot of people had him sort of penciled in as their tour captain, how might this change the dynamic of the selection for the captain for the series and the whole tour as well? And, well, first and foremost, let's deal with just how serious or not this injury is, because the statement that was made by Leinster simply says this: Caelan Doris will have a procedure this week on a shoulder injury. A further assessment will be carried out afterwards. So he went off after 56 minutes in that game between Leinster and Northampton Saints. He looked in a bit of discomfort. It was a shame that he went off injured, because he was one of the few Leinster players that was really standing up and playing well. But what does procedure mean is the first question, because it's been reported in a lot of places that he will have shoulder surgery. And then it also says quite often in the same article, he will have a procedure. And that is what Leinster have said. So is this journalists kind of hyperbolizing it a little bit and making an assumption and saying it's surgery when it's not surgery? Because a procedure could just be a cortisone injection in the shoulder to numb the pain and mean he can get through the next few months in relative comfort, before then maybe having a more thorough bit of work done on his shoulder afterwards. We've seen that happen before, and that could happen again now. However, a lot of places are using the word surgery. I mean, it could well be that journalists are just, like I say, hyping it up a little bit, and it could be just an injection, which they could argue is technically surgery. I think one thing that's quite interesting, and I've been reading around looking what I can, Will Kelleher, who is a journalist that I trust and whose opinion I value, I've worked with him, know him, Times are reputable, and he said that his understanding, or certainly the team at Times Sport understand, that Leinster are not expecting Caelan Doris to play for them again this season. Brutal blow on the eve of Lions squad announcement on Thursday. Yeah, it is. So when would that is just rubbing salt in an opened and very raw wound for Leinster fans, isn't it? That one of their best players may not be playing for them again for this season, and would not be available, potentially, if what Will Kelleher is saying is correct, would not be available for a URC knockout playoff run-in, which is a massive blow, albeit they've got very good players, but he's one of the best of them. So the end of the URC season, if they were to get to a final, would be what? We took in the middle of June? Something like the 18th of June, something around that sort of time? Or is it a week before? Anyway, it's in June. Point being, if Caelan Doris is not fit to play a rugby game in June, how much more rehabilitation and recovery would he have to do? The first game for the British and Irish Lions is on the 21st of June? That's the game against Argentina in Dublin. The 28th of June, they have a game in I can't remember where, but it's their first game in Australia. Starting to get a little bit tight on timescale, if that's true, that he's not expected to play for the rest of the season. That said, we have seen this before with Alan Wynne-Jones, haven't we? In fact, I was at the game at Murrayfield 4 years ago when, against Japan for the British and Irish Lions, the game before they flew out to South Africa, and Alan Wynne-Jones dislocates his shoulder, and you think, oh, his fairy tale ending is over. That's it. Career done. What a way to go. And he got back in double quick time. We've seen Sia Khaleesi manage to recover from an ACL in an incredibly short amount of time. Was it 4.5 months to captain South Africa to a Rugby World Cup victory? So it can be done. It has been done. The medical professionals around rugby are incredible. And let's wait and see how serious it is. But that's potentially worrying, what Will Kelleher is reporting there. And that brings us to a couple of talking points. Who would the number 8 be? Who would the number 8s on the plane to Australia be? How might Caelan Doris's potential unavailability shake things up? Before I go there, I think just to build on what I was talking about with how serious could this be, would he still be injured at the start of a tour? I think Caelan Doris is one of those players that even if he wasn't going to be available until second week in July, let's say, you still take him. That's my personal opinion on it. I would look at Caelan Doris as one of the few players where I would do that. Because there are not many players. In fact, let's go through it now and tell me if you think I'm wrong on this. Who are the players that right now you could confidently say will be starting in the first test against Australia so long as they're fit? And I don't think there's many players you can say that about. Dan Sheehan is one. If he's fit, he'll be starting test 1 because he is head and shoulders the best hooker. Maro Itoje, very confident he'll be starting if he's fit and well. Caelan Doris is another one. And I think the only other player you can say this about is Jamison Gibson Park. So there's only 4 players. And that's because they're that good compared to the next best. And we're talking about Caelan Doris being that good compared to the next best when the back row is absolutely stacked. So that is how good Caelan Doris is. So even if he is injured, I would still name him in the squad. I would be thinking about this in terms of the players that play in France that might well miss the first few weeks of the tour. The only way I would pick them for the tour is if I had I was very confident they would be starting a test match. And so Blair Kinghorn, I think, would be involved in a test match 23, no question. So I would pick him. Jack Willis, that makes him more 50-50 because there are loads of other options. Maybe he's not guaranteed to be in a test match 23. So you might well leave Jack Willis at home, but you take Blair Kinghorn. Interesting. Anyway, let's get into the Caelan Doris discussion. The number 8s, there's loads of good ones. None as good as Caelan Doris, but there's a lot that aren't far off. And the last time I picked my Lions squad, and I'll do my final selection in the next day or so, but the last time I picked my provisional Lions squad, I will commit to my final squad on the channel very soon. But I had Ben Earl and Jack Conan on the plane, both who can operate a number 8 to a very, very high level in Test rugby. And Ben Earl has been one of the best number 8s in the world in the last couple of years. Maybe not quite at his best in the recent Six Nations, as good as he was in 2024, but the World Cup in 23 and through 2024, Ben Earl was immense. So I think he would be next cab off the rank to start in the number 8 jersey. But Jack Conan, he was the starter in the last Lions series, so you can have total confidence in him. Jack Dempsey, that would be a brilliant story with him having, Australian heritage, playing for Australia before he played for Scotland. Brilliant athlete. He's just not been fit a lot recently. Tom Willis, also knocking on the door with some of his international performances. But the one I think stands to gain the most potentially, if Caelan Doris is injured, is Taulupe Faletau, because it could get him on the plane for what would be his 4th British and Irish Lions tour, which would be a very cool story. And even at the expense of Caelan Doris, it would be a cool story. That is the cruel reality of international sport. Sometimes opportunity is all you need, and one person's misfortune is another man's opportunity. And it would be very cool if Taulupe Faletau gets to go. Hopefully, if he gets selected, it's alongside Caelan Doris, but that remains to be seen. As for the discussion of captain, I mean, go back 6 months, and I think loads of people just sort of thought, yeah, Caelan Doris, he's going to be the captain for the Lions. He'd just come back from South Africa last July, August, and he'd won out in South Africa. He'd put in a couple of immense performances on an individual level, but he'd captained the team brilliantly. He'd led Ireland to the Six Nations earlier in 2024. And I think everyone just assumed, well, he's the man. Guaranteed to start. Amazing performer, and he's had a brilliant start to international captaincy. Maybe 2025 hasn't quite been as convincing, and I think a lot of people have started to make noises about other players. This injury, I mean, Andy Farrell made him the Ireland captain, so he would have to be on the shortlist, potential test captain. If he's unavailable and cannot be selected in that role, then the obvious option is Maro Itoje. Personally, for me, and as I've been saying on the channel, he would be my selection as tour captain anyway, regardless. Even if Doris is available, I pick Itoje. He's got the experience of having been on British and Irish Lions tours before, and there's not that many players that have a lot of experience at that, and he's done it. And I mean, he was absolutely incredible in 2017. He was monstrous in 2021 as well. Yeah, the guy's got pedigree, and a dip in Maro Itoje's performance, which we have seen go back a couple of years, is only a 7 out of 10, but he's been consistently through 2025 back up to 8s and 9s out of 10 every single time. And he is one of the players, maybe the player, along with Dan Sheehan, most nailed on to start in a test match. Jameson Gibson Park as well. Other potential, you've got another international captain in Sione Tuipulotu. Obviously been injured a lot, but the Scottish players rave about his leadership abilities. Not guaranteed to start. Very competitive with Aki and Ringrose and Henshaw as other potential players in the 12 jersey. But Sione Tuipulotu, I think, would probably start a test series. Potentially a good captain. The Australian angle on that is a very cool one as well. Jamie George has got lots of experience of international captain. And if Andy Farrell wanted to do it slightly differently, where he had a tour captain, but not necessarily a tour captain who would be guaranteed to start a test match, Jamie George would be a character which I would imagine would be very, very popular with the group. So we could go a different way with that one. And then, of course, one of the other players I've already mentioned who is guaranteed to start. We've seen him captain Ireland a little bit, Leinster a little bit here and there, and he is just an incredible performer and leads with words as well as, well, leads with deeds first and words as well, is Dan Sheehan. I think it'll be Maro Itoje. I think even if Caelan Doris was fit and available and there was no injury problem, I think it would probably be Maro Itoje, but maybe not. Let's hope Caelan Doris is all right. Let's hope we get a little bit more flesh on the bones of that statement. He will have a procedure on this week on his shoulder. A further assessment will be carried out afterwards. Let's hope it's nothing too serious and that maybe Will Kelleher is wrong on this one, although he's seldom wrong, I have to say. We will see. Let me know. If you, hey, look, I'll tell you what, do a public service. If you've heard anything, you know anything, I've read around as much as I can, gone to the sources that I trust the most. But if you know better than me, please drop it in the comments down below, and I'll see you on the next one.